This was seriously one of the most important turning points in history. There was a huge, incredible, unbelievable power. And you could use this power to level up humanity, or you could wipe out societies from the ground. And we would do both. The incredible story of the atom continues with scientists, wars, atomic bombs, the Manhattan Project. The question of whether an atomic bomb could be made now depended on neutron discovery and how the neutron worked. For an explosion to occur with nuclear fission, some kind of chain reaction had to be achieved. The emergence of free neutrons with each fission, and these free neutrons triggering new fissions. And it would soon be understood that this, a chain reaction, was possible with experiments. Meanwhile, the Second World War was continuing with all its destructiveness. In October 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and right after that, in the same month, Albert Einstein wrote a letter full of bad news and warnings to then American President Franklin Roosevelt. Why? You may remember from the previous video that he wrote this letter with the help of Leo Szilard, who believed that a nuclear weapon should be produced, and told Roosevelt the following: as a result of the uranium studies, the chain reaction with fission was successful. A huge power can be obtained by this reaction, and with this enormous power, extremely destructive bombs can be produced. Double quotes. In the continuation of the letter, Einstein said that the German government was also actively working in this field and that America should definitely start these studies. If the Americans lose this race, if German scientists can produce the first atomic bomb, Hitler will never hesitate to use this destructive weapon. At first, Roosevelt wasn't sure whether to take any action on this. But, with the news coming from all sides, it was a terrifying possibility that the Nazis would be able to use such a weapon. That's why Roosevelt soon replied to Albert Einstein in a letter. We are forming a team of scientists and military representatives. Roosevelt first set up a uranium advisory board, asking scientists and military representatives to explore the potential for uranium to be used as a weapon. Enrico Fermi, who had immigrated to the United States at this time, with his team, successfully carried out the first controlled and sustainable nuclear chain reaction using uranium and graphite at the University of Chicago. In the newspapers of that period, this event was compared to discovery equivalent to the discovery of fire by the first man. And so, the atomic bomb was now closer than ever. I knew we were opening a dark chapter in human history, Leo Szilard once told Fermi about this discovery. Roosevelt later included Enrico Fermi in his team, which he named the Scientific Research and Development Board. Meanwhile, while these developments were taking place in 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and thousands of Americans lost their lives. Upon this, Roosevelt announced that America also participated in World War II. Upon this development, military representatives were also included in the Scientific Research Board. In addition to Fermi's uranium studies, scientists such as Glenn Seaborg were also producing pure plutonium samples, and nuclear research was continuing at different facilities in Canada. In order to carry out all these studies in a more organized way, Roosevelt would start the Manhattan Project in December 1942, and J.Robert Oppenheimer, who was conducting nuclear fission studies at the Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico, would be appointed as the scientific director of this project. The Los Alamos Laboratory, also known as Project Y, was to be where the first bombs were produced and tested as part of the Manhattan Project, and on July 16, 1945, in a desert in Alamogordo, New Mexico, the first atomic bomb test, called the Trinity Test, would have been successfully tested. The resulting mushroom cloud would rise more than 10 kilometers into the sky. Physicist Isaac Rabi described this moment as follows: suddenly, a blinding light came out. I've never seen anything this bright in my life. Nobody has seen it either. Then a blast wave that comes and goes even through you. No, I don't believe anyone has ever witnessed such a thing. After the light, a ball of fire appeared. It rose as it rose, as if signaling what would happen next in the whole world. A great monster was being born. Kenneth Bainbridge, another physicist who witnessed this event, actually put it more clearly: we are all cursed now. Yes, With the Trinity test, the atomic age had officially begun. Meanwhile, teams working with Oppenheimer had succeeded in producing two bombs, one based on uranium and the other based on plutonium, an artificial element derived from uranium. Their names would go down in history. They called the uranium-based one the Little Boy and the other the Fat Man. The design of these two bombs was done at Los Alamos, also led by Oppenheimer. And these bombs would be America's most important strategy to end the Second World War. At this time, Germany was inflicting serious losses in Europe and was preparing to surrender. However, America thought that Japan would fight to the end and was looking for a way to end this war. At the Potsdam Conference held in Potsdam, Germany, which was captured by the Allies on July 26, 1945, the USA gave an ultimatum to Japan and invited it to form a new, democratic, and peaceful government. Otherwise, the warning "be prepared for a sudden destruction" was also made. However, the Japanese emperor was going to abdicate according to this call, and he was not seen in future plans. Under these circumstances, the emperor would reject this call. Harry Truman, who became the president of the USA after Roosevelt's death, learned about the success of the Manhattan Project, and now the bombs were ready to be used. Truman asked representatives of the project for advice on whether the bomb should be used and, if necessary, where it should be dropped. Especially after the Pearl Harbor attack, the American public was putting pressure on the president on this issue. The project leaders also decided that if the bombs were used, the war would end and hundreds of thousands of lives would be saved, and that this was the right choice for both Japan and the United States. For this, Hiroshima was chosen as the first target because of its population and the absence of American prisoners there. Using their unlimited power, they would force the Japanese to surrender. And when the date of August 6, 1945 came, the Enola Gay bomber would drop the atomic bomb called Little Boy on Hiroshima. The destruction experienced, the scene, the events experienced as of the moment the bomb touched the ground. It was impossible to see in the history of humanity. Horrible is the word scarce. Thousands of people, how shall we say it, not to die, suddenly, going to work, going to school, going to the market, people, children playing in the parks, they disappeared in an instant. It was as if they had evaporated. I guess that wasn't enough. Neither Japan surrendered nor America gave up. 3 days later, on August 9th, Fat Man would also be released on Nagasaki. In total, the two bombs killed 100,000 people according to some sources and 200,000 people according to others. We do not even count the deaths caused by the diseases they caused, hundreds of thousands of injured, and the psychological effects of this disaster that has been engraved in the minds of a nation. Japan, on the other hand, realized that it would not be able to withstand the second bomb, and would declare its surrender. Setsuko Thurlow, born in Hiroshima, was 13 years old at the time, and was only 2 kilometers away from the explosion. Setsuko, one of the survivors of the explosion, describes that moment as follows. First, an incredibly bright light came from the window. Then, without realizing what was happening, I saw myself flying through the air. The building we were in was also destroyed. All my friends were crying out to their mothers in pain. With a bomb, my whole life, everything I loved, a whole city, my childhood was destroyed. In a second, yes, human history has now been rewritten. Atomic physics was no longer on paper. The incredible energy was no longer in theory. The destructive power of this energy, which would later level humanity up, was also on the scene. It was the first time that science and society came together on such a stage. In 1949, the Soviet Union also participated in this race and entered into a nuclear rivalry with the USA, which formed the basis of the Cold War. After that, the bombs would get bigger, more destructive. Next was the hydrogen bomb. While the atomic bomb is based on the splitting of the atom, or fission, the hydrogen bomb is based on the unification of the atom, that is, fusion. This produces a much greater energy with much less input. In 1952, the USA detonated the first hydrogen bomb, which he named Mike, in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. The resulting explosion was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Less than a year later, the Soviet Union had responded by detonating a hydrogen bomb. The superpowers of the world were making a show of power by detonating the super bombs one by one, while ordinary people were watching what was going on with fear. Beyond the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb was seen as a weapon of mass destruction, a force capable of wiping out all of humanity. In those days, there were rumors of a great nuclear war that would really destroy the whole world. However, many non-governmental organizations wanted a nuclear arms control to come and were working for it. In the 1980s, the nuclear weapons in the world reached its peak, and then, thanks to international agreements, this number was thankfully much lower, and production and tests were taken under control. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. In 1948, scientists discovered that electricity could be produced using nuclear fission with a nuclear reactor. When we came to the 1950s, the first power plants that provided energy to the world began to be open. Humanity has attained a much faster, safer, credible energy source. Gift of jewelry. Yes, until new nuclear disasters. First, the 3 Mile Island accident in Pennsylvania in 1979, then Chernobyl in 1986, most recently in Fukushima in 2011. Along with these disasters, a great reaction began to occur against nuclear energy, in addition to all its advantages. In other words, the history of humanity regarding nuclear physics studies is very, very turbulent. But here it is. We have to remember that science is not to blame in itself. The problem is not scientific developments. Problem, as we see in all epic stories, legends or movies, it lies in how one uses the power in their hands. Both the problem and the solution are ultimately human. As we bring our exploration of the Manhattan Project to a close on this YouTube channel, let us remember the lessons of history and the significance of scientific innovation, inspiring us to strive for a better and more peaceful world. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey.